Hi everyone, welcome. We're down here in my wormery and we're going to be checking in on these African nightcrawlers that live in my second oldest system. I'm not even sure if you can consider it second oldest system, perhaps third oldest system, because I do have a continuous sort of perpetual system, which I guess by its nature is the oldest at this point and will continue to be so. Of my systems that have sort of a defined start and finish, this is now my second oldest system. The one system that is older than it over there, you can see it looks a little offset. It's because I've been setting up a horizontal migration to try to get the worms out of their finished castings over into a collection area. And I've been thinking that after 21 feedings that this system here has gotten over its 256 days in service, I think we're probably in a position to maybe get this system up and running as a horizontal migration too. So the system doesn't look the way we left it, but we had forecasted the possibility of something like this occurring between the last video and today, this next check-in. So yeah, as you can imagine, I was thinking things were a little bit dry, wanted to provide a little bit more protection. So off came the little bubble wrap, on went this full-size plastic sheet. A lot of the top covering paper that was on there too came off. So we're going to get these little guys up on the bench, and I think we're going to get them started on a horizontal migration. Let's get started. So I guess the first question that probably comes to mind is why not put all this stuff back into the system rather than leaving it out here to be dry. You know why? Because when I went in there to basically remove the small plastic and put down this larger one in its place, this paper, this feeding zone indicator, this coffee filter over here, the plastic, just like we showed in the last video, was covered in springtails. So yeah, you could see them. Look at all that light colored stuff over here on the plastic. That's all dried up springtails. So I stranded them out on this plastic. They had nowhere to go. As the water evaporates, any moisture content evaporates, that's pretty much the end of them. And it's been that way. I mean, it's been 14 days since the last time we checked in. And I might have even done this perhaps right away, the day after we last checked in. I just spilled a bunch of springtails and a little bit of castings material on the nice new tablecloth. So the feeding occurred down the middle here, and like I said, I didn't return the feeding zone indicator, I didn't return the paper top covering. In the place of the little plastic went the full-size plastic, resulting in what seems like a better containment of the system's moisture. They got plums, they got some bread, some baked goods that were totally soaked in water too. So the moisture content that came in with the last feeding I think was adequate to counteract, I think, one dry napkin that might have been put in there on top. Everything else had a good bit of moisture content. There was probably like about 4 plums in there, chopped into 4 little quarters each, and no pits, just the frozen fruit. So before we dig into the feeding zone to see how they handled the plums over the past 2 weeks, I'd really like to just compare with what we saw here last time, which really kind of led me to want to come back in here with the larger plastic. The same thing happened last time, was that we went pouring through this edge material and found no worms. So once again, I feel like I've seen not one yet. So that was the whole idea behind putting the plastic on, to be a little bit more protective of the system's moisture rather than letting the opposite occur, which is to just be carefree about it and say, well, come what may. I felt like it would be a good idea to try to hang on to the system's moisture. But you know, this is a little bit freaky, but I don't think it's much different from last time. Last time we did go into the feeding zone and locate a really nice turnout. All the worms were gathering around where the nice juicy past meal had been placed. So I guess with all this buildup, it's time to see where the worms are. Hopefully they're down the middle, where we gave them bread and plums. And this is a piece of bread already just holding out. Didn't go very far. I guess I didn't soak it thoroughly enough. I did soak the bread that I gave them. And they got a few chunks of it, so anything we find like that might be bread, might be paper. It's hard to say. Some sort of bedding material. But this is clearly where the worms are. Down where the juicy foods had been placed. Oops, okay. Well, we just barged in on them enjoying something. This definitely looks like some sort of bread-like material. Oh, yeah. And it does seem like we've got to go down pretty low in order to encounter the worms. Perhaps the material near the surface is just not quite damp enough for their liking. So this system, I think, could definitely use a little jolt to the moisture content. So let's see down here. I went all the way to the bottom, tried to excavate the material at the very bottom. Here's another chunk of what might be bread, I believe, or bedding, or who knows. Probably bread. And there was a piece of it. One piece of it definitely seemed really popular. I can definitely smell the scent of plum. So it's not gone. I mean, we might have bumped into a few chunks of it. That might be what is really drawing the worms, perhaps leftovers of the yummy fruit. But I can't really, like, physically point a piece of it out. I think it was already kind of dark when we started, when we first fed it to the worms. And now to try to, like, differentiate it from all this dark material, it would be tricky. So we've pretty much aerated the entire system, excavated anything we found as far as leftovers go. It just feels to me like something's got to be done with the moisture. I mean, maybe just leave this stuff to really keep going down that road of continuing to get drier. And then the worms have already been kind of going through their routine of picking and choosing what they like, what they don't like, and they've been moving out of the drier stuff in favor of the more damp stuff where the feedings have been. So, you know what? I've thrown a whole bunch of leftovers that we encountered over to that edge. And if we find any more, we could toss it over there, and we're going to use that stuff to reconstruct our feeding zone in a new location this time, over on this edge over here. And everything else will be thought to be pretty close to being finished castings. I mean, I've been definitely picking out bits and pieces of what I think were possibly leftover plum or whatever. So it doesn't matter, you know, if there's still some stuff out there that's not really fully broken down, the worms will continue to work it. But hopefully it's not too dry. You know, I got my bottle here. I think it's high time we simply pull the trigger and go, you know. What am I dawdling with? Let's just give these little guys what they need the most, which is moisture. And, you know, that almost feels like it was just sort of a surface level thing. Feels like if we really want to see something, we got to sort of blend it in. So why don't we do that while we're at it? My glove is going to be covered in stuff. But I think the worms are going to appreciate it, and hopefully it'll get them cruising through all the material in the bin. So let's I don't know. I'm just kind of maybe going a little overboard, picking through it, thinking that I might find more chunks of fruit, because we are still sort of working through the material that had been down in the feeding zone right here in the middle. This stuff doesn't need quite as much of a moisture jolt, I don't think. It feels like it's got a good moisture content to it, but even I guess it's perhaps just the least dry, you know. Maybe they're still considering all this as not being quite damp enough, and if they are, then they're just going to that because it's the least dry or least unfavorable. So I'm going to treat the fact that we found, you know, virtually no worms on the outer edges as clear evidence that what we're doing here as far as adding moisture is kind of important. because I want them to come over, you know, once we build up this edge that we're going to affectionately refer to as our horizontal migration feeding zone. You know, we're going to want them to come over there gradually at their own leisure. But I think I'd really like them to continue working this stuff over here down. So hopefully we've made it comfortably damp for them, so that they'll be able to hang out there as long as they like, break it all down into beautiful castings, and then once they're feeling comfortable about moving over into the newly constructed space that we make for them over here, then we'll certainly consider them as welcome guests. See here too, such barren material. I don't think we really need to go much further. I think we can actually begin by just bringing in a lot of this material. At this point I'm thinking just deceased springtails. It's all organic matter. It's going to break down. It's all fair game for worm traffic as far as I'm concerned. We're just going to make sure that we place it in here with an adequate amount of moisture content so that it can be immediately adopted by the worms as a cozy place to be. Let's see, I didn't really prepare with a whole lot. I figured we'd be reusing that piece of paper right there. Oh, you know what? I've also got a couple napkins, a couple paper towels. They're all part of what I bought down here to be their feeding. Some fruits and veggies, a piece of banana bread, a couple days worth of coffee. So since there's those 2 coffee filters coming in, we can certainly assume that we can use one of those as a feeding zone indicator, or both of them. And the old one down here can just go in as supplementary bedding. Alright, we've definitely created a beautiful foundation onto which we can now place their foods. I'm bringing back all the old stuff. We'll just pile that all right in here. There's already some worms hanging out on the stuff. I think it's mainly plum. I wasn't quite sure what to expect from that stuff in terms of, you know, how quickly it would break down. I think there's a good bit of it that's still here, just based on what my nose senses. I think I smell it. So we're not going overly formal on this setup. Sometimes I'll lay out a piece of cardboard, which is really meant to guard against the beautiful castings over here getting contaminated by scraps of shredded paper, cardboard, bedding like that. But look at all the bedding we've used here. Whole pieces of napkin, whole pieces of paper towel, whole pieces of newspaper. And I guess we could even use these. I think we're going to know where we fed. So not even sure how important it is to have these as feeding zone indicators. But I think we should also, you know, it's right here behind me. Let's at least drop in one of them. This will sort of force us into dealing with the fact that we've only got one as a feeding zone indicator. That'll get rested out on top at the end. I do have some bedding, which normally I would just have this already uncovered at my disposal. I didn't come prepared. Let's just give them a little bit of this stuff. But let's try not to position it in such a way that it's going to contaminate our lovely castings. Let's place it more on the far edge. And, you know, this is going to be a perfect excuse, I believe, to rinse off my glove and leave all this lovely material right down here in the worm bin, rather than me rinsing it off at the sink. That's pretty nice. At the same time, we're going to be creating an environment that the worms are going to stampede over each other to get into here first to see who can be first to come in here and take part in this lovely, heavily dampened fruit and veggie bonanza, which even has some baked goods in it, a whole bunch of large size bedding, even a little bit of small size bedding. And you know what, just to cap it off, give them a little bit of grit, give them a little bit of worm chow. I am so tempted. I've got this piece of, oops, okay, cardboard could certainly use as a mechanism for keeping our castings clean, but you know, I'm going to resist the temptation. We're just going to go for it as is. We're going to, maybe that is sufficient right there. I don't know. I just have this thing about wanting to keep the feeding zones covered, you know, thoroughly enough to make sure there's no interested insects coming by to check out what's going on there. So in keeping with that sort of thinking, I definitely feel like I want to take extra care in making sure that this feeding zone is thoroughly covered. This will, in part, allow it to hang on to its moisture really nicely. And there we go. And hopefully become a place that the worms are going to, you know, consider really inviting to come over there and hang out in. So we're going to officially treat this as the start of the horizontal migration of the worms out of their lovely castings, thoroughly dampened, I believe. Hopefully enough to make it cozy for them. A couple things we're not bringing back, I suppose, at this point are the small piece of bubble wrap, but I'll have to clean off the castings, and then this piece of cardboard, I suppose, can still serve as sort of a shade mechanism just to create darkness underneath itself. Who knows, maybe inspiring worms to come out who would otherwise see too much bright light coming through this translucent plastic and not want to go there. So maybe it'll increase traffic. We'll see. So that's it for the video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.